Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm. Not much introduction. If you're at this part of the series, you know what we're doing. What is sensorality? I'll put in commentary and explanation when I need to. If not, this one will be a big chunk of just derivation, which the logic will speak for itself. So what is sensorality? Right. Last episode we identified a physical process that has not been rigorously articulated. When I say what is a click, what is the next operative word? Describe that. What is the next word that connects to clicking? Right? Clicks into place. Because for the pen cap, it's very clear when I say snap your fingers what I mean. But for the pen cap, is that a click or is that a snap? Or is it something else? And so we've identified a physical process. We've showed that sensorality with a C clicks with linguistic consistency. But was clicking random? No, it's not, right? African languages, Swahili, I don't know if Swahili specifically, but a lot of African languages and certainly dialects have clicks in them. And so it's like, how does dark energy and dark matter build up to clicks, the emergence of clicking in languages? And obviously it doesn't. But which sounds do they represent? I don't know. I think it's a lot of like the P sound becomes a click. I feel like the R and the L will become a click, but just look it up. But it's not relevant for R proofing, but the point being is the word click represents the sounds that we make in languages, right? Cyclicity. And so it's just kind of really, really interesting there. But we've derived or droved, again, that's kind of funky, is how do I say about a complete proof in the past? It's like for deriving sensorality, I drove speciality, but that's never, no one's ever documented a complete proof before, so it's cumbersome and neither of those words sound logically correct, but it's there. But what is a click? Vibrality, sorality. Vibrality is one more letter than virality, right? If we take out that b sound, we go from vibrality to virality. Sensorality is viral. And so now we've related it to a form of vibration. Virality is a form of vibrality, vibrationality. Rolling is not spinning. We've shown how vibration generates movement degenerates into vibration, but not all movement is categorized by vibration. Still think we're there, we haven't, I don't know if we've shown it or not shown it, but I don't think it's true, or it's not true, but proven to completeness, because again, we have translational motion, which translational in that aspect is an adjective, but motion that is translational isn't generated by vibration. But spinning is not moving, and vibration is everything that is not moving. And so spin is a form of vibration. And you might be saying, well, how? Right, how is spin not moving? Right, well, we have to define movement with a reference frame. Thanks, Albert. But for real, right? When I'm referencing the quarter spinning around or going from moving to spinning or to vibrating, the short that I did, which again is still a complete physical model, but spinning, right? When you talk about the internal spin, what you're really getting at is equilibrium, right? Our equilibrium states are not static, they're not stagnant, they're not stationary, they're internally moving. But movement is in relation to something else. The way the quarter is moving in relation to the table, but once it starts vibrating, it's not moving in relation to the table, but there's still internal motion of that system. And that is the big connecting piece where you can basically solve Navier-Stokes trivially. And we'll get to that, but again, this is all new stuff. In the same way you sit down and think of what I'm going to do for a YouTube video, and then you sit there and you get stuck. This is all brand new logical derivation every single day. And it has been for 8.5 years documented. So going to solve Navier-Stokes isn't that big, but it is one of those that Navier-Stokes could have been resolved as soon as Newtonian mechanics existed. I mean, that's probably one of the easiest ones. Like the Riemann hypothesis and P versus NP, those are purely logical mathematical solutions. Navier-Stokes is directly physical. And so all of the intuition is certainly there if you just understand what impulse is. But spinning is not moving, therefore spin is a form of vibration. distinctly different because there's obviously different words, and it indicates you have different intuition when you hear those words, but it's a form of. Because they both do not move. Sensorality is ordinary. Speciality is extraordinary, right? And now again, we've talked about how those prefixes with those that end in a vowel and then the base word starts with a vowel gets cumbersome, right? How do you spell extraordinary? Do you spell it out extraordinary, or you take out that A, right? Maybe you're British and you're extraordinary, right? Extraordinary. But I have it speciality is extraordinary with no A. And then I just have, because it expands speciality, right? If you're distinct, if you're different, if you're differentiating, you're extra, you're extraordinary, right? There's the slang, there's the formal, which again, slang really isn't slang. It's just breaking down grammar intentionally. But sensorality extraordinates. And so I put the A back in there because now sensorality has to contain the entire definition of speciality. So now we're going to differentiate the connotation of sensorality versus speciality. Sensorality is amoral, right? Our base of sensorality with an S is sensorality with a C. My pool table does not have morality, but it is a sensor. If you drop a ball on it, it will physically censor, it will block its motion. Sensorality is amorality. Amorality is between morality and immorality. If you're moral, you're actively doing good. If you're immoral, you're actively doing bad. If you're in between, you're not doing anything. You're indifferent. You're amoral. Speciality is immorality, making that connection of connotation to the negativity of speciality, right? If you're trying to impress a girl or impress your gang members and you go do something that's bad, what are you doing? You're speciating, you're being different, you're showing them your value, your allegiance to the group, but you're deviating, you're an outlaw, you're deviating from accepted behavior. And so, why are women attracted to bad boys? Because of that sheer difference, or because some sort of mixture of confidence. You say, I'm going to do what I am going to do, not what the world tells me to do. And there's an inherent attraction to that individuality, that go fuck yourself, that I'm going to live my life kind of mentality. Because everyone's an individual, so people are drawn to that. But for our proof, what we're getting at is we're making speciality has a negative connotation to it. Really, again, words aren't good or bad, but we're differentiating now speciality and sensorality. Immorality is degenerate, right? If someone says you're a degenerate, that's what they're referencing is speciality, right? You wanted to go be in that gang, you wanted to impress the girl, so you did some shitty behavior, you went and robbed somebody. You degenerated from a state of morality or just indifferent amorality into speciality, something actively immoral. Sensorality degenerates into speciality, right? How do fights begin and progress? You're out at a baseball game and you're there with your family and you just want to have a good day, and sure, you're rooting for your home team, but you're not gonna, you're not one of those CEOs that's gonna kick a little kid to get a foul ball or a home run ball. And then somebody, kind of bumps into you and you're kind of perturbed, but they're getting to your seat, so it's obviously not a big deal. And then that same person walks by you and bumps into you again and kind of seems intentional. And now he's got an opposite team's jersey on, so maybe he's antagonizing you. So you're kind of fluffled. And then he comes by and he spits on your kid. And you say, okay, fuck it, I'm going to fight this guy, right? That is, in that example, someone spitting on your kid, you're clearly in the right. But my point is you go from quote-unquote civilized behavior, and then there's a certain point where you degenerate into more primitive behavior. And in that example, obviously, if someone spits on your kid, it's just on sight, no doubt. But point being is you degenerate from what is seen as formal, civilized, to back to our natural primitive selves. And so now again, remember, range degenerates into base in its entirety. We've proven that. So sensorality degenerates into speciality. We just proven that intuitively. And now we have to do that linguistically. Sorrel is to special what same is to different. Nature or nurture? Nurture. Right? That question in its entirety can be solved, proven in its general just by saying nurture. Right? Why? Because sensorality is nurturality. And so, does your genetic makeup affect who you are, how tall you are, your skin color, almost certainly your sexual orientation, all of these innate things that you didn't choose, that is determined, that is your nature. But your nurture, your environment, the way you grew up, who you grew around, your values, what you were exposed to, that is what defines you as you, right? When people say I'm speaking in the whole existence of a mother tongue, when people say I speak multiple languages, and then I feel most like me in that language, you weren't born speaking words, right? You associated those sounds to feelings and to experiences, so that is the most you, right? And so your nurture is the most you. How you were raised is the most you. And so that in its entirety, nature or nurture, QED, done. Sensorality is nurturality. Sorality nurtures. Nurturing is culturing, right? What happens when you put a bacteria in a petri dish, right? You're nurturing bacteria. You're building a literal culture, right? So our culture is the same exact thing as a culture of bacteria, literally, right? Fractals, that's not just mathematical, that's all physical systems, right? There's a book out there called Scale. I think it was released in 2018, when I first started emailing Science Club. And it literally showed all of these different physical properties that any physical system has the same kind of rise, fall, life, death, businesses, anything. And so that's true. Not even my work, but it's demonstrably true. But if you put bacteria, if you form a culture in biology, you form a city, right? Sensorality is sympathetic. Speciality is pathetic, right? What is the difference between sympathy and empathy? One is like, again, there is a difference. I don't know the difference, but the point is there is a difference, right? So speciality is pathetic. And you might kind of see, how does that relate to, wanting to differentiate for sexual antagonism? If you're pathetic, that doesn't necessarily seem like you're that big of a catch for the dating pool. But sensorality is sympathetic. So it's a clear difference, but it's like, why is that connected to the other thing? It's not really. It's just, well, it is, but we're progressing our logic to the final definition. And so now we're making that differentiation. Sensorality is sympathetic, whether you say sympathy or empathy, good thing to care about other people. Speciality is not that. And not that is represented by the word pathetic. So I just said you're pathetic, you would get it that it's negatively connotated, I'm demeaning you. But you'd be like, how's pathetic not sympathetic? But it's clearly based on pathetic. Sympathetic is clearly based on pathetic, which are both based on path. Which path do you want to choose? Hopefully it's not the path integral. And then you're probably thinking, what did he mean by that? I didn't mean anything. I'm just playing with logic in front of you. You goofy goober doofuses. But we made a clear differentiation in terms of connotation of what's good if you're sympathetic or empathetic, whatever the right word is. And the S is consistent to sensorality. But you're doing something good, whereas pathetic is something bad. And then so speciality is pathetic. It's just like, which is true, right? If you're a grown man and you're hanging out with your friends and someone's behaving like a high schooler or a college kid, you're just like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? You're pathetic. And so it's logically consistent. But the word pathetic is not very specific. What's the difference between and in between? See how that's still logically consistent, but you kind of expected me to say something else? But there was that one episode where I was like, what the fuck am I even saying with between and in between? They're clearly different words. One negates, in between negates between, but there's got to be distinct, we need our RAS, reasonable articulated definition. It's RAS is reasonable articulated suspicion for legal people, and I just try to plug that into here. But what is the functional difference between and in between? And I didn't say, because I would have to say what's between and in between. No, not doing it, even though I just did. But there's functional differences, and it clearly in between negates between. Positioning is based on it. Again, look at the word. Posit, position. 3 letters, it, 3 letters. Positioning is based on sensoritality. Right, so now we've connected, right? Remember I said we can finally define position? Now we have sensoritality. And so the point being is we've connected position. We all know what that means intuitively. But then we've reworked all of physics where, mass is the space. So how is one thing related to another? They're physically connected, which gets at the mass gap problem of Yang-Mills, which I'll get to that. I want to review that to speak specifically to that. But again, all of the millennium problems, again, the mathematics that I've proven is so much more comprehensive. It's the first complete proof that has ever existed for human beings. So all of these other things are truly just trivial solutions. And same with like there's no solutions for a to the n plus b to the n equals c to the n. There's no solutions past 2. Fundamental stability of 2, trivial as well. And there's really nothing else to say. You have to prove these massive things, and then all of these else, it's just really nothing. But we have position is sensorality. And so clearly we know what position is, and now we've connected it to sensorality, and they're both based on it, or sensoritality, which is a form of sensorality. Sensoritality positions, orit, osit, the two bases of those two words is what is now we've connected. Because remember, I don't even know if I said this in this series, but over email, we have to like flip the bases or something, but something will happen. I'm not going to try to explain the final reduced solution. It will speak for itself. How does positioning relate to substitution? All right, substitution iterates. Permeate, iterate. Permeation, propagation. Intuitively, I don't really know what the difference of those words are. Or are they just forms of the same word, or words that represent the same intuition, same physical process with just different application in a different context. But positioning and substitution, that's kind of where like first in, first out comes from, last in, last out, last in, first out. Those kind of words, that kind of logic exists because of this relationship. What is the relationship? I don't know. Pose the question, moving on. And all of these questions that I pose and I don't go back and answer, they're not really relevant to the axiomizing sensorality. Right? This is why this is a new math subject. Other people are going to go figure out these different things that I pose a question to, and then people go do work and research around this. This is, like I told you, the wild, wild west. These are all things that can be proven into theorems and proofs and this and that. So if I ask a question and don't return to it, it's just not relevant to what I'm doing, which is when I demonstrate all of these different functions, right? Horseshoes and hand grenades. Even if I can't, right? It doesn't matter if you're at a formal dinner, if the salad fork's next to the dessert fork, it matters that there's fucking food on the table, right? So I'm putting the food on the table, and you guys can figure out the formalities. Finishing up, complete, compete. How has communication affected competition? It's almost like I answered that in my financial series called Communication Killed Competition, because it does. On your cell phone, when you sit there, look at me or look at anybody else, you're seeing how everybody else behaves every single day. And so behavior is normalizing overall speciality, which includes other species. Boys and girls, big old world out there. Get out there and enjoy it. But obviously, complete and compete are different by one letter. Completeness exists. That word exists because you can complete things, including mathematical proofs, which have never been done before, except for the time that I did it. But right, competition is speciality competes. Well, I'm a competitive person. You're a fucking dork. Speciality competes. Sensorality wins. You want to compete with somebody? Compete with me logically. Compete over shit that matters. Let's progress science. And let's see who's doing the winning. You compete, I win. You just haven't said my name yet. But anytime someone says I'm a competitive person, they're expressing speciality. I want to be better than you. Let's fucking go. How Harvard and Oxford, and again, they're all connected. It's not like these people don't communicate. All of you guys versus me, and you guys can't even keep up. Life is not a competition, right? And it's getting away from like the go fuck yourselves on a personal level, back to friendly science, Brad, because it isn't. Games are bounded. Games are competitions. Life is not bounded. If you have the most gold, you're really rich. Well, if I build a spaceship and fly over to planet X and there's a lot more gold, right, it changes. So it's like, you can't win life. Y'all die. And so you can be productive, you can be moral, you can be a good person in a relative sense, not in an objective sense, but life is not a competition. So sensorality completes speciality. You're a hard worker, you're a go-getter, you're Peter Thiel and your gay boyfriend while you want to take over the world and be the big venture capitalist. And then there's a video of you saying everything you said from age 20 to 30 was insufferable. That was when you were special. And now you're a little more sorrel, right, buddy? Oh, now I just want to be, I'm a human being too. I was really aggressive and I was totally a competitive dickhead, but then once I realized I couldn't win, now treat me like a human being too. Go fuck yourself. But that's where we're finishing. Sensuality completes speciality. See you on the next one.